out the case against socialism. You know, Bernie Sanders is no longer alone on the debate stage. It seems like we're hearing more and more about socialism. In fact, 43% of Americans think it's a good thing. You are on the complete other end of that. Tell us about this book.
Well, one of the things we learned in writing the book is a lot of people say, well, we're not for Stalin, we're not for Hitler, we're for Scandinavia. So as we were researching the book, we actually found that Bernie Sanders' form of socialism actually is unpopular, and he would never get elected to anything in Denmark. In fact, the Prime Minister of Denmark, when he heard Bernie was going around saying they were socialists, says, no, we're not socialists. We have private property, a stock exchange, we have low corporate income taxes, we don't have a minimum wage. And the big difference, and this is where the big lie comes from, Bernie says we're going to give you all this free stuff, but we're only going to tax the rich people. In Scandinavia, they tax the working class, 25% sales tax, and an income tax starting at $60,000 is 60%. So really the difference between their country and our country is they do have more free stuff in Scandinavia, but they pay for it with massive taxes on the working class and the middle class.
But we have massive taxes here, but we don't get any free stuff. We don't have free health care. Well, our public education system is a problem. It seems like the only people that get free stuff are the very, very wealthy.
No, we have a different form of taxation in our country. Ours is much more progressive. So we've taken the poor off of the rolls. They don't pay income tax anymore. Most people below $50,000 don't pay any income tax. The top 1% in our country pay 40%.
Our audience says that's not true.
Well, the IRS statistics say that the top 1% in our country pay 40% of the income tax, and that those making less than $50,000.
Donald Trump doesn't pay any income tax.
Let me ask you this, because I live in Miami. There's tens of thousands of Venezuelan exiles living there. You talk a lot about Venezuela in your new book. I get a lot of political ads from the Republican Party. Donald Trump has tweeted this. Many have tweeted this. If you vote for Democrats, they will turn the United States into Venezuela. Do you think that's a fair statement to make?
Well, if you vote for a socialist, you might get socialism.
Come on, don't do that. Maduro is not a socialist. He's a corrupt, murderous thug who is starving his people.
That's not true.
That's not true? Maduro's not a thug and a murderer who's starving his people.
Let's have a conversation here. Chavez was a socialist, and socialism was the economic system of Venezuela.
Stole.
What's going on, guys? This is a throwback all the way to October 6, 2015, when campaigning for the 2016 presidential election was just beginning. This is when Dr. Ben Carson appeared on The View and decided to educate all of the women on The View. What I liked most was that they couldn't have an intellectual discussion with the points Carson was making, and you can also tell that they were extremely timid on actually seeing Ben Carson in person, unlike talking crap behind his back like they normally do. Anyways, I'm going to be chiming in for my full analysis on it, and there are some educational points brought up that I thought made this a worthwhile video. If you're new, make sure to subscribe. Also, make sure to like the video and share the video as well.
One of the other quotes that we've sort of gotten from the research is that you sort of feel that there is not actually a war on women, but there may be a war on what's inside of women. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the babies. I mean, we're killing babies all over the place.
Look at all these women's looks, especially Raven Simone on the right. They are all clearly most likely pro-choice, yet when Ben Carson states the fact that we're killing babies all over the place, as in aborting them, they looked shocked and speechless.
And, you know, we should be, I think people can probably understand. In my case, I spent my entire career trying to preserve life and give people quality of life, even operating on babies in the womb, operating all night long sometimes on premature babies. And I get to meet those people, you know, when they're adults and productive adults. There is no way you can convince me that they're not important, that they're just a mass of cells and that you can do anything to them.
I want to ask you this. Have you met with the women who have to make these horrendous decisions when they have to make them of whether or not they can bring a child into the world? I mean, we talk about bringing children into the world all the time, but periodically, some women feel, I just can't. And are you empathetic to them? Because we just had
empathetic.
Oh, good.
So this is what happens when you have the women of The View talk to one of the most distinguished doctors in the world. Remember, Ben Carson is a doctor, or more specifically, a neurosurgeon. I may be reading Whoopi wrong here, but she seems to be playing an emotional argument against one of the greatest doctors in history. Now, instead of Whoopi taking on Ben Carson's argument of him saying there is no way that's just a bundle of cells, no, that's actually a baby, which means you can't kill it, Whoopi steers towards an emotional argument of, do you have any empathy for the people who have to make decisions to kill their baby? To which Dr. Carson responds accordingly.
Go ahead, sorry. Go
Very
ahead.
empathetic. And what I have said is that this is a job for us in the private sector. What we need to do is make sure that we provide adequate daycare centers for these mothers so that they can get their GED, their associate's degree, their bachelor's degree,
you're assuming that these are mothers
degree.
who aren't educated. I mean, I'm talking about women who make
most
that.
Of them.
I don't know that you can.
Let me tell you. Let me tell you a fact. Let me tell you a fact. The fact is, a lot of those young girls who are having babies out of wedlock, when they have that first baby,
about them,
they stop their education. And that child is 4 times as likely to grow up in poverty. We as a society have an obligation to do what's necessary to stop that cycle from occurring.
Did you notice the reeks from the crowd when Dr. Ben Carson actually points out this fact? There are so many studies on this. Here's just one from U.S. News saying that poverty and children born out of wedlock are absolutely connected. If you're a fan of my channel or a fan of Ben Shapiro or Ann Coulter, you should know that we all have mentioned this many times. The number one thing that will predict whether or not a child is a criminal, a failure, a success, a juvenile, whatever, is not the color of their skin or the way they talk or walk or even just poverty alone. It is being born into a single mother household. It turns out that kids need both a mother and a father. Who knew, right? Now, don't get me wrong, it's no different with a single father household, but there's a perpetuating cycle of single motherhood in the country. Now, let's look back on the video on what Ben Carson was saying. Ben Carson was addressing this point. He was only addressing this point because he was then going to say that society needs to take better care of these individuals and that the private sector could do a wonderful thing. But, of course, as you heard from the reeks in the crowd, there is very little opportunity to make the point of single motherhood like this without someone calling you a sexist or just reeking at you or saying you just hate women or something like that.
Important is birth control, then, to the Republican Party. They should be out there regularly applauding Planned Parenthood for supplying birth control, mammograms, and everything else. Why are they against Planned Parenthood?
Idiot Joy decides to make the false claim that is made by almost all Democratic leaders. Yes, Planned Parenthood supplies birth control. They generally only supply birth control because they know birth control is somewhat ineffective due to human error, as in women forget to take it at the same time every single day, which is what needs to be done for the effects to work. What happens if the birth control fails? They get pregnant again. Where do they go for their abortion? Planned Parenthood, of course. Now, something that upsets me the most about the Planned Parenthood argument. No, they do not supply mammograms, Joy. When Joy listens to her Democrat leaders like Bernie Sanders and even Barack Obama say this, she is utterly convinced that it is true. Yet, a simple Google search shows that they do not supply mammograms. This is just another leftist lunatic lie. Getting back to the overall point Joy made about Planned Parenthood, Republicans generally are against Planned Parenthood because not only do they not supply mammograms or prenatal care, they supply abortions. They are the abortion clinic of America. Republicans are generally against abortions. It's just that simple.
Are you against birth control, too?
I don't speak for the Republican Party. I speak for me.
Okay, for yourself. Are you against birth control also?
No, I'm not.
Okay. All right. And so I guess you believe in daycare centers and maternity leave and food stamps and all the things that go along with raising a kid if you don't have the money. Here's what I believe in,
because I get sick and tired of people, particularly progressives, saying Carson grew up poor. He must have benefited from government programs, and now he wants to withdraw all the programs from poor people.
We did not assume
Wait a minute. I've heard that so many times. You've heard it too. It's a bunch of crap. And what I really actually want to do is provide people with a mechanism for coming out of a state of dependency and climbing the ladder and becoming part of the fabric of America.
This is a great thing.
We agree with that.
Really, Joy? You agree with that, Joy? Really? Maybe you do agree with that. You know what? Maybe you do. But you don't agree on how to get there. Also, I love the subtle punch in the face Carson made to progressives.
Yes, but I think my question, Actually, I'm going to let everybody else ask their questions. I don't
Well,
want to be
it
off.
takes me to Obamacare because you said it's the worst thing that has happened in this nation since slavery. How is it slavery and over 9 million people have it?
Let me tell you why.
Why?
Because this is supposed to be a country that is of, for, and by the people. The government is supposed to be there to facilitate life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. With this particular act, the government comes along and says, don't care what you people think. This is what we're doing. We're cramming it down your throat, and if you don't like it, too bad.
Getting into the war.
Whoopi made the most popular leftist argument. I really felt the necessity to pause here just to remind you of how to combat this leftist argument. So let's review. Ben Carson points out how Obamacare is a disaster and how it doesn't advocate the principles of a free society, to which Whoopi responds with, kind of like getting into a war. For one, it depends on which war you're referring to, because war powers are granted to the United States government in the Constitution, obviously, and forcing people to buy health insurance is not granted to the United States government in the Constitution, obviously. But above all else, it's a complete avoidance of the argument. Ben Carson is destroying them on Obamacare. Instead of these leftist ladies of The View responding directly to Carson's argument, they completely avoid it altogether and start talking about something else that has absolutely nothing to do with Obamacare. Yes, we can agree certain wars were bad. Just because certain wars are bad doesn't mean that Obamacare is justified in any way, shape, or form. Simply put, one mistake does not justify the government to do another mistake.
That essentially shifts.
Because we did that. We've done that. That seems to be the way of the nation.
But it shifts the relationship between the people and the government. The people are supposed to be at the pinnacle. The government works for us. It's not the other way around. And we need to restore that.
Okay.
That's very important.
All right. Are we done?
Anybody else?
I just wanted to ask one last thing. I mean, you said that you don't necessarily relate to the Republicans, and you don't really say you're a Democrat either. So why do you feel this way?
I said I don't speak for the Republicans. I didn't say I didn't relate to them.
Yeah.
It's a very different thing.
Is there anything about the Republicans that you don't relate to?
Well, I am not a highly partisan person. The issues that affect us are imminent financial collapse if we don't change our ways.
Forgive me, Dr. Ben.
Forgive me. They're not Republican or Democrat issues.
Dr. Ben Carson, y'all. Members, wait. Members of the audience, you're all going home with Dr. Ben's book, A More Perfect Union. Thank you, Dr. Ben.
So here's Ben Carson, probably the nicest guy there is, and these women can't even carry out a sophisticated discussion with him. You can tell that all they do is talk crap on Republicans behind their backs, but when they show up there, they're sort of speechless, the women of The View. They're sort of speechless. Anyways, guys, that's the throwback to The View, having Ben Carson on. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed and subscribe as well if you're new. Also, make sure to share the video as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see all you guys on the next one.